Welcome to the world of science fiction and forgotten worlds. Alien Universe. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and never miss a new movies and story from this channel. The first thing Jace heard wasn't an alarm. It was a sob, thin and broken, like someone had been crying for so long that even their tears were tired. He stopped in the shadow of the corridor, holding his breath, because in a place like this, you didn't hear crying unless someone wanted. And if they wanted you to hear it, it meant you were already too close. Jace wasn't a hero. He was a maintenance runner, the kind of guy who fixed doors, replaced filters, and kept his head down. He worked under contracts he never fully understood, in a facility that didn't exist on maps. Don't ask questions, the supervisor said. Do your job and go home. But Jace had seen too much to stay blind. The locked elevators, the double-armed guards, the crates stamped with warnings like live biological cargo. And once, late at night, he saw a stretcher rolled past him with a sheet covering a small body that did not look human. So when he found a dropped access badge near the service tunnels, he didn't hand it in. He kept it. He told himself it was only for safety, only in case he ever needed to escape. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wanted to know what they were hiding. That night, the power flickered. Red emergency lights blinked in long, slow pulses. A distant siren tried to scream, then choked into silence, like someone had cut its throat. The air felt colder, and the walls seemed to vibrate with nervous energy. Jace followed the sound of crying, step by step, until he reached a door marked with a symbol he had never seen before, 3 circles locked together like chained moons. He swiped the badge. The lock clicked. The door slid open. Jace expected weapons or machines, or maybe a lab full of strange tanks. What he saw instead made his stomach twist, like a display case in a museum. Inside, in the far corner, was an alien girl. She was small, thin, and shaking, with knees pulled tight to her chest. Her skin wasn't green like the movies. It was pale with a faint shimmer, like starlight trapped underwater. Her hair was long and tangled, spilling over her shoulders. Her eyes were too big, too bright, and filled with something that broke Jace's heart instantly. Fear. Not the fear of one bad day. The fear of years. And she had nothing. No blanket. No bed. They hovered for a second, as if gravity hesitated, then drifted down slowly like clear beads. Jace stared, frozen, because it wasn't just cruelty. It was the kind of cruelty that felt planned, like someone had designed this suffering and called it science. On the wall beside the prison, a screen showed numbers and charts. Heart rate, brain waves, oxygen level. Under it, a warning in bold. Letters. Do not approach. Do not speak. Do not disable containment. The girl wasn't treated like a person. Jace stepped closer to the glass, his boots loud in the quiet room. The girl flinched so hard she almost fell backward. Her eyes locked onto him, and Jace realized she was trying to make herself smaller, like she could disappear if she shrank enough. He raised both hands slowly to show he wasn't a threat. Hey, he whispered. I'm not here to hurt you. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. Still, her breathing stayed fast, panicked, trapped. Jace looked around for a door, a handle, anything. There was nothing. Only the glass and the glowing lines at the base, pulsing faint blue, like the prison was alive. His chest tightened. He pulled off his jacket, the only warm thing he had, and held it against the glass. A human thing that didn't belong to this cold room. The girl stared at it like it was a miracle. Slowly trembling, she lifted her hand and pressed her palm against the glass from the inside, mirroring Jace's hand on the outside. For one moment, they were almost touching. Then the lights cut out completely. Darkness slammed down like a door, Jace's heart jumped. He heard the facility come alive with distant chaos, the muffled thump of boots, the sharp crackle of radios, voices barking orders. The power flickered back on in weak red pulses, and now Jace could see his own breath in the air. Cold. Too cold. Footsteps were coming. Fast. Close. Jace turned toward the control panel, hands shaking, and swiped the badge again. Access denied. He tried again. Denied. He cursed under his breath. The crying behind him turned into a small, scared gasp, like the girl knew exactly what denial meant. Jace grabbed a loose metal bar from a nearby toolbox, not even questioning why the toolbox was there. He ripped open a small maintenance hatch at the base of the prison, snapping bolts with brute force. Inside were thick cables pulsing blue, feeding the containment field. He hesitated. Every warning sign in the room seemed to scream at him. But then he looked at the girl again. "I'm sorry," Jace whispered, not sure who he was apologizing to. He yanked the main cable. The blue pulse died. The glass prison shimmered, like heat over asphalt. A ripple ran across it, then another, like the air itself was struggling to hold together. And then, with a deep, low sound, the containment collapsed. The barrier vanished, and the room felt different instantly, like the air finally had permission to breathe. The alien girl coughed and inhaled sharply, like she had been trapped underwater and just reached the surface. Her hands flew to her chest. Jace stepped forward carefully, holding out his jacket again. This time, there was no glass between them. She stared at him, then at the jacket, and her fingers shook as she reached for it. She wrapped it around herself, clutching it like armor, like warmth, like hope. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Her throat moved, but no sound followed, like her voice had been stolen. Jace's anger flared. What had they done to her? A harsh shout exploded from the doorway. On the ground, now. Flashlights cut through the room. 3 guards rushed in, rifles raised. Their faces weren't surprised. They were furious, like this was the worst thing that could happen to them. One of them saw the open hatch, the dead cables, the girl standing free, wrapped in Jace's jacket. He didn't aim at Jace. He aimed at her. "Shoot the specimen." The guard yelled. Jace moved without thinking. He stepped in front of her, arms spread wide like he could block bullets with his body. "No." He shouted. "Stop." "She's not." The guard's finger tightened on the trigger. And in that exact second, the alien girl lifted her head, staring straight into the light. Her eyes changed, not in color, but in feeling, like something ancient. Woke up behind them. Jace felt a sudden pressure in his skull, like invisible hands touched his mind. And then he heard a voice, not through ears, inside his thoughts. Clear, trembling, and terrified. "Human, why did you come?" Jace's blood ran cold because he didn't imagine it. He knew he didn't. He could feel her fear like it was his own. He swallowed hard, staring at her, while the guard shouted and moved closer, because now it wasn't just a rescue. Now it was a connection. And whatever this girl was, whatever she could do, these people were ready to kill her to keep her silent. Jace took a shaky breath, and in his mind, he answered her the only way he could. "Because you shouldn't be in a cage." And behind the guards, far down the corridor, another set of footsteps echoed. Slower, heavier, not rushed like soldiers. Controlled, hunting. One guard glanced back, and his face went pale. "Sir, it's coming," he whispered. Jace didn't know what it was. But the way the lights flickered again, and the way the air suddenly felt colder, told him one thing. Something worse than guards was on its way. The guards didn't fire right away, not because they felt mercy, but because fear interrupted their training. Jace took that moment and backed up slowly, placing himself fully between the girl and the gun barrels. "Don't shoot," he shouted. "She's unarmed. She's terrified." One guard barked. "Step away from the specimen." Specimen. Jace hated that word. The girl flinched when she heard the harsh tone, even if she didn't understand the language. She pulled the jacket tighter, shoulders trembling, and Jace felt her presence like a storm right behind him. Then her voice brushed his mind again, weak and shaking. "They hurt me." Jace's throat tightened. He tried to answer inside his head, not sure if it would work. "I'm getting you out," he thought, pushing the words with all his focus. "Just stay close." Her eyes flicked to him. A soft pressure touched his thoughts, like she had heard him. The guards moved in. Two stepped to the sides, trying to surround him. Their boots scraped the floor. A flashlight beam swept across the girl's face, and she winced like the light itself was a weapon. "Down!" the lead guard shouted. "Now!" Jace's mind raced. He couldn't fight 3 armed men. He couldn't reason with them. And whatever was coming down that hallway was making even trained guards nervous. That meant time was almost over. His eyes snapped to the toolbox in the corner. He saw a red canister with a simple label, "Fire Suppressant." Without thinking, he grabbed it and threw it hard at the far wall. It burst with a sharp pop, releasing a thick white cloud that swallowed the room in seconds. The guards cursed, coughing, shouting, their flashlights turning into glowing circles in fog. Contact lost. "Watch your fire." Jace reached backward, found the girl's wrist gently, and squeezed once. A silent promise. "Run," he hissed. They sprinted out into the corridor as the fog spilled through the open door behind them. The emergency lights blinked red, then dimmed, then blinked again. Jace pulled the girl forward, guiding her around corners, trying to remember every turn he had seen on maintenance maps. Behind them, the guard stumbled out, shouting into radios. "Sector 9 breach. Specimen loose. Seal all exits." Jace's heart hammered. The girl's breathing was ragged, and she stumbled, barefoot on cold metal. Her legs were thin, shaking with every step, like she had forgotten what running felt like. Jace didn't let her fall. He scooped her up into his arms. She gasped, startled, then went still, eyes wide. He expected panic, scratching, struggling. Instead, she stared at him like he was doing something impossible. "You carry me, like I matter." The words in his mind felt like a knife. "You do matter," Jace whispered aloud, even if she couldn't understand. "You're not dying in that place." He ran faster. They reached a heavy maintenance hatch marked maintenance only. Jace slapped his stolen badge on the scanner. Denied. He cursed, then drove his shoulder into the door. Pain shot through him. He hit it again. Metal groaned. On the third, the lock snapped, and the hatch swung open into a narrow service tunnel that smelled like oil and old air. Jace slipped inside and pulled the hatch shut behind him. The sound of the guards became muffled instantly, like the tunnel swallowed the world. For a moment, all Jace could hear was his own breathing and the girl's quiet trembling. He set her down carefully. She leaned against the wall, clutching the jacket around her body. In the dim red glow, Jace saw marks on her skin, thin lines that looked too clean to be accidents. Cuts made by careful hands. Experiments. Jace's anger rose so hard his hands shook. "What did they do to you?" Her eyes closed, and without warning, images slammed into Jace's mind like a flood. Bright white rooms. Cold tables. Needles. Hands and gloves. A sharp pain in her throat. Not a cut, but something worse, like someone reached inside her and tore out the part that made her whole. Jace stumbled, grabbing his head. "Stop, please." He gasped. The pressure eased immediately. Her mind voice returned, softer, like she was ashamed of the pain she showed him. "They took my name." Jace swallowed. "Your name?" A pause. Then, slowly, carefully, as if the word itself was fragile, she sent it to him. "Leora." Jace repeated it out loud, almost like a prayer. "Leora." Her shoulders dropped a little, and her eyes shimmered with tears again. This time the tears looked different, less empty, more alive. Like hearing her own name reminded her she was still a person. "Okay, Leora," Jace whispered. "We're getting out. There's a cargo lift at the end of this tunnel. I know the way." Leora stared at him, then glanced upward, as if she could see through the ceiling. "Outside, sky?" "Yes," Jace said quickly. "Sky, air, freedom." For the first time, her face showed something that wasn't fear, wonder, like he had described a legend. Then the tunnel lights flickered, and a low hum rolled through the metal walls. Jace froze. The hum got louder, closer, vibrating in his ribs. "Drones," he whispered. Leora's expression changed. She tilted her head like she was listening. To music only she could hear. "Machines taste minds," she whispered inside him. "They follow the heat of thought." "What does that mean?" Jace asked, but he already felt it. His own fear was loud inside his skull, and loud things were easy to track. Leora raised a shaking hand. The air around them shimmered like cold glass. Jace felt his thoughts quiet, as if someone turned down the volume in his brain. The drone. Hum passed over the tunnel, then drifted away. Jace stared at her. "You hid us." Her hand fell, trembling. Sweat beaded on her forehead. "It costs." Jace's stomach tightened. "They drained you," he whispered. "Used you until you had almost nothing left." Leora didn't deny it. Her eyes lowered. "I was a key," she sent. "They wanted the door." Jace went cold. "What door?" Leora looked up, and her eyes seemed older than the facility, older than Earth. The door between worlds. Before Jace could even breathe, a metallic clang echoed from farther down the tunnel. A hatch they hadn't opened started to move, scraping. Loudly. Someone, something, was coming from the other side. A voice boomed through a speaker, smooth and cold. "Subject 13, return to containment." Jace's blood turned to ice. Leora grabbed his arm, nails biting into his skin, and her mind voice shook with terror. "That is not human." The tunnel went silent for a moment, a kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Jace slowly turned toward the metal hatch at the far end. It was opening from the other side, inch by inch, like something strong and patient was pushing through. Tall figures stepped into the red emergency light. It looked human at first. 2 arms, 2 legs, armored from head to toe in smooth black plating. But something about the way it moved made Jace's stomach tighten. The movements were too perfect, too calm, like gravity barely mattered to it. Leora's grip on Jace's arm tightened. "That is the hunter," she whispered inside his mind. The figure stopped about 10 meters away. Its helmet turned slightly, studying them. Jace felt like an insect under a microscope. "Subject 13, the voice said again, echoing through the tunnel. "Return to containment." The voice sounded human, but empty. Like someone speaking through a mask without a soul behind it. Jace stepped forward, placing himself between Leora and the armored figure. His heart was hammering, but he forced his voice to stay steady. "She's not going back." The figure tilted its head a little more, as if it found that statement interesting. "You are not authorized to make that decision," it replied calmly. Jace looked around quickly for anything he could use as a weapon. A broken pipe lay near. The wall. He grabbed it and held it like a bat, even though he knew it probably wouldn't help. "Try me," he said. For a second, nothing happened. Then the armored figure moved. One moment it was standing still, and the next it crossed half. The tunnel in a blur. Jace barely had time to swing the pipe. It struck the armor with a loud metallic crack, sending sparks flying. The figure didn't even flinch. Its arm shot forward and slammed into Jace's chest. The impact threw him backward, like he weighed nothing. He hit the wall hard, air exploding out of his lungs. The pipe clattered to the floor. Jace groaned, trying to breathe. Leora cried out inside his mind, a sharp burst of fear and pain. The armored figure stepped past him, reaching calmly for her. "Do not resist," it said. Leora stumbled backward, shaking. She pressed herself against the tunnel wall, eyes wide with terror. Her breathing became fast and uneven. "You cannot fight it," she whispered to Jace. "It does not feel." Jace forced himself to stand. His ribs burned, but he ignored the pain. He lunged forward and grabbed the back of the armored figure, pulling with all his strength. "Hey!" he shouted. "I'm the one you want." The figure stopped again. Slowly, it turned its helmet toward him. "You are irrelevant," it said. Its hand snapped out and grabbed Jace by the throat. The grip was like steel. Jace's feet lifted off the ground as the figure held him up easily. Dark spots filled Jace's vision. "You interfered with a secured asset," the voice continued calmly. "Your removal will correct the error." Jace clawed at the armored, fingers around his neck, struggling to breathe. He tried to kick, but it was useless. Behind the figure, Leora's fear turned into something different. Desperation. Her eyes began to glow faintly, like pale stars waking in the dark. He felt it. Before he saw it. A pressure building in the air, heavy and strange, like the world itself was holding its breath. "Leora." He choked. The armored figure noticed too. Its helmet tilted toward her, subject energy rising, it said. Leora lifted one shaking hand. "I will not go back," she whispered aloud. The moment the words left her mouth, the tunnel lights flickered wildly. The metal walls vibrated with a deep humming sound. Jace felt a strange warmth flood his mind, like invisible waves moving through him. The armored figure's grip tightened. Energy spike confirmed. It said. Then something impossible happened. The armored arm holding Jace twisted sharply to the side, like an invisible force grabbed it and bent it. The metal screeched loudly. The figure staggered, losing its balance. Jace dropped to the ground, coughing violently as air rushed back into his lungs. The armored figure stepped back for the first time. Leora stood there, shaking, her glowing eyes locked on the hunter. Tears streamed down her face, but her hand stayed raised. "I am not your key," she said, her voice breaking but strong. The armored figure analyzed her silently for a moment. Then, slowly, its helmet began to open. The metal plates folded apart. Like petals, Jace stared, expecting a face underneath. There was no face. Inside the helmet was only darkness, not normal darkness. It looked deep, endless, like a piece of empty space had been stuffed inside the armor. Tiny sparks of light moved inside it, like distant stars. Jace felt cold all the way to his bones. The thing spoke again. But this time, the voice didn't come from speakers. It appeared directly inside his mind. "Return the key." Jace forced himself to stand again, even though his legs felt weak. "Her name is Leora," he said. The darkness inside the helmet shifted. "Names are irrelevant." "Not to me," Jace replied. The creature took a step closer. The air around it seemed heavier, bending slightly as it moved. "You do not understand the consequences." The voice pressed into his mind. Jace wiped blood from his lip and shook his head. "Maybe not," he said. But I understand cages. Behind them, deep in the facility, alarms suddenly exploded to life. Sirens screamed through the tunnels. Red lights flashed faster. Brighter. Then another voice echoed through the loudspeakers. Smooth. Calm. Dangerous. Well, the voice said slowly, this is disappointing. Jace's heart sank. He knew that voice. Director Vale. I leave the system alone for 10 minutes. Vale continued. And a maintenance worker decides to steal my most valuable discovery. Jace clenched his fists. She's not yours. Vale chuckled softly through the speakers. Oh, but she is, he replied. Everything in this facility belongs to me. Liara trembled beside Jace. He owns the cages, she whispered. Vale's voice continued like a man explaining a simple lesson. You see, Mr. Jace, Subject 13 is very special. Her species can hear the frequencies between realities. They can open doors that should never open. Jace felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of doors? Vale answered without hesitation. The kind that lead to other worlds. For a few seconds, the tunnel felt colder than before. The alarms kept screaming through the walls, red lights flashing again and again, but Jace barely heard them. His mind was stuck on one sentence. Other worlds. He slowly looked at Liara. You mean she can open a portal? He asked. Director Vale's voice answered from the speakers, smooth and proud. Not just a portal, Vale said. A gateway between realities. A door to places humans have only dreamed about. Energy beyond imagination. Materials beyond physics. Entire civilizations waiting to be explored or conquered. Jace felt sick. And you did all that to her? He shouted. Vale sighed like an impatient teacher. You say that like it's a bad thing. Progress always requires sacrifice. Humanity didn't reach the stars by asking politely. Liara's hands began to shake again. She pressed them against her head as if the voice itself hurt her. He made me sing, she whispered inside Jace's mind. He forced the door open. Jace frowned. Sing? Vale laughed softly through the speakers. Her species calls it a song. A resonance. They can hear the hidden vibration of reality itself. When they focus, they can bend it, open it. Think of it like a key unlocking the universe. Jace felt the truth settle like ice in his chest. She's not just a prisoner, he said slowly. She's a tool, Vale replied. Liara flinched like she had been slapped, but then something else happened. The armored hunter standing in the tunnel suddenly stepped forward. Its empty helmet turned toward the speaker in the ceiling, and when it spoke again, the voice in Jace's mind sounded different. Stronger. Vale is lying. Jace blinked. What? The armored figure turned slightly toward him. The key does open doors, but Vale does not understand what waits behind them. Vale's voice immediately cut in, irritated. Ignore that machine, Jace. It's an automated containment unit. A security system built by the same alien species that created your little friend. Jace looked between them, confused. You mean, it's not yours? No, Vale replied quickly. We recovered it with her. A relic. A guard dog. But the armored figure's voice pushed firmly into Jace's mind again. We are not his creation. We are the lock. Jace stared. The lock? The figure nodded slightly. Our purpose is simple. When the key opens the wrong door, we close it. Jace's stomach twisted. He looked up at the speaker. Vale, what exactly are you trying to open? For the first time, Vale hesitated. Only for a second. Then he answered, opportunity. But Liara's fear suddenly exploded inside Jace's mind. No, not opportunity. Her eyes filled with panic as she looked directly at him. The door is not a path. It is a mouth. Jace's blood ran cold. A mouth to what? He asked quietly. Before Leora could answer, the armored lock spoke to the hollow. The word echoed strangely inside Jace's mind. A place older than stars. A place that devours energy, matter, and life. Our creators learned long ago that opening that gate destroys entire civilizations. JAC slowly turned toward the speaker in the ceiling. You knew. He said. Vale did not deny it. Instead, he laughed. Yes? Vale said calmly. Of course I knew. Jace felt rage rise in his chest. You're trying to open a gate to something that eats worlds? Vale's voice remained calm, almost bored. You say that like it's a problem. The words stunned Jace. Do you know how much energy exists inside the hollow? Vale continued. Infinite power. Infinite resources. Humanity could become unstoppable. It would destroy everything. Jace shouted. Only if we lose control, Vale replied. And that's why we have her. Liara trembled beside Jace. He cut my voice, she whispered. So I cannot refuse. Jace looked at her throat. Suddenly, he understood why she couldn't speak. Normally, they hadn't just tortured her. They had altered her, forced her to obey. Vale continued, his voice growing excited. You see, Mr. Jace, the key alone cannot stabilize the gate. The energy is too chaotic. But when a human mind connects with the key, the resonance becomes stable. Jace froze. What? Vale chuckled. That's why my system warned the staff never to speak to her. Emotional connection creates synchronization. You bonded with her. Mr. Jace, congratulations. Jace's heart started racing. No, that's not possible. Oh, it is, Vale replied happily. You are the missing piece. The tunnel lights suddenly turned bright blue. The walls vibrated violently. Jace felt an intense pressure inside his skull, like invisible hands were squeezing his brain. Liara cried out silently, dropping to her knees. It's starting. Jace shouted. Vale's voice sounded almost worshipful now. The halo gate is opening. The air in the tunnel twisted like heat waves. The metal walls groaned as reality itself seemed to bend. Jace's mind filled with strange visions. Endless darkness. Stars being swallowed. A massive shadow moving slowly through space like a living nightmare. He staggered backward. Oh my God. There. Locke stepped forward urgently. He is using you as the anchor. Jace grabbed his head. How do I stop it? The lock answered instantly. Break the connection. Jace looked down at Liora. She was shaking violently, tears falling from her glowing eyes. If I break the connection, he whispered. The lock finished the sentence. The gate will close, but the key will lose her power forever. Jace's chest tightened. Liora looked up at him slowly. Her mind voice was weak, but calm. If door closes, monster sleeps, but you'll lose everything. Jace said. Her home, her people, her connection to the universe. Liora gently touched his hand. You gave me something stronger. Che. ACE. Blinked. Hope. That tunnel shook harder. The air cracked with blue lightning. Vale's voice shouted through the speakers. Yes! The gate is responding. Don't fight it, Mr. Jace. This is the birth of a new human empire. Jace slowly stood up. He looked at Liora. Then at the lock. At the glowing tunnel walls. And finally up at the speaker. No, he said quietly. Vale laughed. You can't stop it now. Jace grabbed a thick power cable hanging from the wall. You're wrong. With all his strength, he ripped it out of the system. Sparks exploded everywhere. The blue light flickered wildly. Liora screamed, and the gate began to collapse. Tunnel exploded with sparks and violent shaking. Blue light flashed across the metal walls, like lightning trapped inside the facility. Jace fell to one knee as the pressure inside his head suddenly vanished. The connection was broken. The halo gate was collapsing. Leora collapsed beside him, breathing hard, her glowing eyes slowly fading back to normal. The strange energy that had filled the air disappeared like a storm that had finally passed. For a moment, everything became quiet. Then Director Vale screamed through the loudspeakers. "No. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Jace wiped blood from his mouth and forced himself to stand. His body hurt everywhere, but he was still alive. That was the point, he said. Above them, deep inside the facility, something massive rumbled. The systems that had been forcing the gate open began to overload. Red warning lights replaced. The blue glow. The lock stepped forward, its dark helmet slowly closing again. "The gate is sealed," it said inside Jace's mind. "The hollow sleeps again." Jace looked down at Leora. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded weakly. Her voice inside his mind sounded quieter now, like a distant echo. "The song is gone." Jace understood what that meant. She could no longer hear the universe the way she once had. The power Vale wanted was gone forever. But when Leora looked up at the ceiling, where a small crack showed a piece of the night sky above the collapsing facility, her eyes filled with something new. Not power. Freedom. Sky. She whispered. Jace helped her stand. "Yeah," he said with a tired smile. "Let's go see it." Behind them, the facility alarm screamed as explosions began tearing through the lower levels. Director Vale had lost everything: his experiment, his control, and the key he thought he owned. Jace took Leora's hand and started walking toward the emergency exit tunnel. The lock followed silently behind them. For the first time in years, Leora stepped out into the cold night air. Wind touched her face. Above her, the stars stretched across the sky like endless lights. She stared upward, amazed. Jace watched her quietly. "You're free now," he said. Leora looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. And this time, when she spoke inside his mind, her voice was steady, because a human opened the cage. Far away, beyond the stars, something ancient listened to the silence where the gate had almost opened. And for the first time in a long time, humanity had made the right choice.